A very good morning to everybody, both in the room and those joining us online today. We are at the global launch of one of UNCTAD's most important flagship reports, which comes out every 2 years, the Digital Economy Report 2024. To present the key findings of the report and the recommendations from UNCTAD, we are joined by Secretary General Rebeca Grynspan, Secretary General of UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD, and Shamika Sirimanne, UNCTAD's Director of the Division on Technology and Logistics, who have coordinated the research and production of this flagship report. We will first give the floor to the Secretary General, then to the Director, and then take questions from the floor, both from media present in the room and those accredited and connected online. We remind all that the report is embargoed until midday today, Geneva time, from which time all information in the report itself will be available on UNCTAD's website at unctad.org. So, Secretary General, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amalia. So, like Amalia said, we are presenting here today one of UNCTAD's key reports, the Digital Economy Report 2024. This year, the report explores the link between the global digital economy and the environment, and what this means for development. Our message is clear. The digital economy is driving global growth, but it is also having an increasing environmental impact that has to be considered. Our key concern is how this affects our environment and how it affects developing countries. Developing countries, as we know, are disproportionately suffering from the impact of climate change. So they are, on the one hand, not at the forefront of reaping the benefits of the global digital economy, but on the other hand, they are disproportionately affected. So the disparity can and must be reversed. Let me be clear. Digitalization is welcome and necessary, an unnecessary driver of global economic growth. However, it must be inclusive and sustainable as rapid digitalization escalates environmental concerns. We can offer a positive outlook based on opportunities because we need the digital economy to catalyze growth and generate opportunities for all. That is why we put forward in this report not only an analysis, but a strong section on the recommendations of how we can manage the impact of digital economy on the environment and on climate change. So let me first consider the impact of the digital economy on climate change. In 2020, the digital economy emissions accounted for 1.5 to 3.2% of global greenhouse gas emissions, between 1.5 and 3.2% of global greenhouse emissions. Similar to air transport or shipping, so it's very important. Let's analyze this more closely. In 2022, data centers consume 460 terawatt hours of electricity. This could power about 42 million US homes for a year. This figure is expected to double by 2026. The rise of technologies such as artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency mining has significantly increased energy consumption. For example, Bitcoin mining's energy consumption rose 34-fold between 2015 and 2023, reaching around 121 terawatt hours. What does it mean, 121 terawatt hours. For comparison, countries like Belgium or Finland consume under 90 terawatts hour. So only the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining is more of what Belgium or Finland consumes per year. So we can see that this is something that we cannot consider marginal in terms of the impact or the need for renewable energy investments to be able to counteract the climate change impact that this has. Second important sector of concern, digital waste. Digital-related waste increased by 30% between 2010 and 2022, reaching 10.5 million tons globally of digital waste. And digital waste management remains inadequate. This is a huge concern given the pollution this generates and its impact on the environment. Third, the use of critical minerals. Today, developing countries are key producers of critical minerals essential for the digital economy, also for the energy transition. They hold the key to the growth of the digital economy we are witnessing. A 500% surge in demand for minerals crucial for digitalization is estimated or predicted to be by 2050. So we are expecting a 500% surge in the use of minerals for digitalization by 2050. And this is driven by consumer electronics, electric vehicle batteries, and renewable energy storage. This is a development opportunity for resource-rich developing countries. However, this can only be realized if these countries can add value to extracted minerals, utilize proceeds effectively, and diversify within the value chain and other sectors. This ambition requires a strategic shift towards sustainable and inclusive digitalization. This means reducing waste and environmental impacts and improving the efficiency of raw material use. Fourth concern, water consumption. Here, let me mention some examples to illustrate the impact of the digital economy on water consumption. In the United States, 1/5 of the direct water footprint of data center servers reportedly comes from moderately to highly water-stressed watersheds. Google disclosed that in 2022, total water consumption at its data centers and offices amounted to 5.6 billion gallons, about 21.2 million cubic meters. For the same year, Microsoft reported that its water consumption was 6.4 million cubic meters. So water consumption by data centers has recently stoked tensions within local communities in several countries. For example, Google planned to build a data center in Uruguay, which led to public debate. In 2023, Uruguay experienced the worst drought in 74 years, and more than half of its 3.5 million citizens were without access to potable tap water. So here, the tensions in the use of water, when you have water stress or droughts, also because of climate change, also add tensions in terms of how to manage water use. Microsoft training of GPT-3 in its data centers in the United States directly consume an estimate of 700,000 liters of clean fresh water, only for training their GPT-3. So, what are the policy recommendations? With regards to the environmental impact of the digital economy, we must integrate environmental and digital policies, embracing a circular economy, prioritizing the recycling, reuse, and recovery of digital materials, and implementing resource optimization strategies, including the life of the electronics that we use that are being discharged beforehand. And we need global commitment to adopt these practices. So again, circular economy has to be considered seriously when we talk about digitalization and environment. Today, UNCTAD calls for stronger environmental regulations and investments in renewable energy to mitigate the ecological footprint of digital technologies. Closer international cooperation is critical to ensure equitable access to digital technologies and address the global nature of digital waste and resource extraction. So, the increased demand for critical minerals presents an opportunity for resource-rich developing countries to add more value to extracted minerals, diversify their economy, and enhance their development. But technology has to be transferred and has to be more efficient for this to be able to be compatible with the environment and climate change objectives. The digital economy is central to global growth and development opportunities. So we need to implement the practices that will take us to a win-win space, and not to do this against our also important objectives or environmental sustainability and our commitments to climate change. So let me thank the team, Shamika, thank you, and the digital economy team, thank you, Torbjörn, for a very good report, and I hope that it can drive, inform policies and inform commitments to be able to drive growth in digitalization that will be more inclusive and more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. We now give the floor to Shamika Sirimanne, UNCTAD's Director of the Division of Technology and Logistics, who have produced the Digital Economy Report 2024. Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Amalia. SG, let me tell you, it's a difficult act to follow after you, but let me try. So let me bring 4 messages or 4 points from the report. First one, digitalization is happening at a fast and furious pace. The number of internet users went up from 1 billion in 2005 to 5.4 billion in 2023, last year. I mean, take digital trade. At UN Trade and Development, we estimated that the total value of e-commerce sales went up from $17 trillion in 2016 to $27 trillion in 2022. This is a massive jump. You don't see these kind of jumps in trade data. And this is even an underestimation because we have data for a very limited number of countries. Now, between 2010 and 2023, shipments of smartphones more than doubled. From 2001 to 2022, the number of semiconductor units sold quadrupled. So the list goes on, and this is just the beginning. And the second point, digital technologies can help to address environmental challenges, but they also leave massive environmental footprints. So we need to figure out the balance. The good side is often talked about. We talk a lot about, digital technologies can reduce paper use and improve energy efficiency, and they can help cut greenhouse gas emissions in transport, in construction, agriculture, and energy sectors. We do this talk a lot. But the downside is not talked about as much. Many feel that digitalization and the digital economy are happening in the void. That it is virtual, it is intangible, and it is in the cloud. So I want to say, to the contrary, digitalization is highly materialistic. One of the numbers that we have in our report is that making a 2-kilogram computer involves extracting 800 kilograms of raw materials. I think, SG, you mentioned data centers consume massive amounts of energy and water. Just last week, I think Google also announced that its greenhouse gas emissions over the past 5 years have gone up by 48%. And this is for running data centers that power their AI products. So the e-waste is another big one. SG, you had the numbers for the e-waste. So the third point, addressing environmental footprints of digitalization is urgent. Collectively, we need to act now before it is too late. I'm thinking of, for example, the climate-related disasters. They are all upon us, and it's a bit late. So effective global governance is urgently needed. This is a key message of the report. There is no global framework to galvanize collective action, to facilitate knowledge sharing among countries, to set global standards, and to encourage transparent reporting and monitoring of environmental sustainability of digitalization. Let me just give 2 examples. We need better data on the environmental impacts on the digitalization, on the use of metals and minerals, energy, water, greenhouse gas emissions, and also on e-waste. There is a total lack of timely and comparable data and hardly any harmonized reporting standards. It's difficult to make a compelling case for policy reforms and also to hold big tech responsible if we do not have solid facts and evidence. The second example, we need a dialogue between digital and environmental policy communities. SG, this is something that you just mentioned, at national level and also at international levels. Now, international processes related to global environmental challenges need to pay a lot more attention to the role of digitalization. I'm here referring to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, and the related COPs. We need to pay a lot more attention in these platforms for the digitalization issues. And the fourth point, the last point, I think, SG, you started with this point, so I want to end so we have a connection. We connect all the dots. Let me echo what SG said at the very beginning. You see, most developing countries have seen very little benefits of digitalization, but they shoulder much of its negative environmental impacts. This has to stop. 1/3 of the world's population does not even have access to the internet. Digitalization brings 0 benefits for them. LDCs hardly benefit from e-commerce that I mentioned earlier, the numbers. Many developing countries are providers of critical raw materials for digitalization, but do not have the ability to move on to high value-added processing and end products. And most developing countries are also the destination for significant digital waste. And low-income countries also tend to be more affected by climate change, and we know this, and they lack the capacity to use digital technologies for reducing negative environmental impacts. For example, digitalization is critical for developing early warning systems, and so forth. They don't have the green agriculture. They don't have the digital capabilities to address the environmental issues. So let me say, as our SG said, digitalization is critical for global growth. Achieving more sustainable and inclusive development from digitalization will require a reversal of the status quo where the developing countries have very little benefits so far from digitalization, but much of its environmental impacts they have to shoulder. This has to reverse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. We now go to the floor. Journalists can now raise questions, both in the room first and those that are online. So please identify yourself so that both the Secretary General and the Director are aware. Please, go ahead.
What do you think the impact of AI is going to be? It's a growing field, and it takes up ever more server power and electricity. What's the impact of AI going to be?
Shall we take another question if there are any online? Yeah, and then we can go right ahead. Yeah. I don't see any for the moment online, so we can go with the question from AFP. Thank you.
Yeah, AI is an incredible, intense consumer of energy, and training the models is incredibly electricity consuming. The numbers I think that we gave are very telling. First, on electricity, the numbers we gave, let me look at them, and maybe Torbjörn, you can add to that, is that artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency mining are the two things that we saw more closely. And in artificial intelligence, Torbjörn or Shamika, we had also, because I gave the number on cryptocurrency, but in AI, we had also some of the numbers. I think that they were also in our press release. Do you have the name? Torbjörn, can you come here and give us some of the illustration?
Like what you said before, about the data centers, because they are mostly used.
Yeah, but the data centers are not the same as the AI training. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, SG, and thanks for the question. Well, to start with, no one knows exactly. There is not one number on the impact of AI, but what has been highlighted in the report is that especially the generative AI processes have really added energy consumption because it is so compute intensive. What has been highlighted also are some example of the impact of training of various large-scale language models. But what is being seen now also, if you take the example of ChatGPT, for example, you can see that the focus has so far been mainly on the training, because every individual request to ChatGPT may not be very energy intensive, but the fact that you see the global nature of the use of these kind of tools at scale. So it's expected that the inference, the use of these tools will become the big user of energy as a result of the scale. There's a lot to be seen. We don't know precisely how this will evolve, and there are no perfect data being collected yet. So this is one of the messages also of the report, that we simply have to get a better evidence base to look at this. We need to require the big corporations that are involved in this to report more on this kind of developments. And we need to monitor how much they can improve the energy efficiency of the various AI tools. But so it's an early assessment. We provide various detailed examples from separate companies, but there is the information that exists is basically on the data centers, which includes information on AI and Bitcoin mining, et cetera, et cetera.
Just to add to what Torbjörn was saying, say, for example, if I go to ChatGPT to do a search of literature or find some information on something, it's much more energy consuming than if I just go and Google, the search word. So it's that level of the how you use the AI is also adding to the enormous amount of burden to the energy. Now, I think these numbers that we saw from Google last week, they issued some numbers that, for example, they said the greenhouse gas emissions over the past 5 years have gone up by 48%, and this was for running data centers that power their AI products. So as Torbjörn says, the problem we have in this whole gamut of things, we simply don't have standardized data. There's no definition for this. There's no collection of data. There is no way of monitoring what's going on, and that's pretty scary.
It will be very good if some responsibility on producing the data will go to all the big five, yes? Because we have only sketchy data, as was said by Torbjörn and by Shamika, but also not everybody is reporting. Not all the big ones are reporting. It will be good to have a standardized and reporting responsibility.
Thank you very much. We now take questions online. I see Jérémy Lange from Radio France. Please go ahead, and then colleague Margot Guillot from Jeune Afrique. So please go ahead from those joining us online. Jérémy Lange, Radio France first.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to go back to AI and what you just said. I think, if I got this right, is that you said that ChatGPT required like 700,000 liters just to train the AI. I'd like to make sure that I got the figures right. And but can you explain again? In the end, like AI and the digitalization of the economy requires a lot of energy, a lot of water to cool down the data center. So what is the alternative here? Because we know that the numbers you gave, like the emission, will rise in the next in the coming years. So what are the alternative to cool down the data centers? Yeah, can you give us a couple of insights? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me give some general answers, and let's ask the experts to go deeper in it. First of all, the data, the number that I gave is that the Microsoft training of GPT-3 in its data centers in the United States directly consume an estimate of 700,000 liters of clean fresh water. So the first thing that you think about this is, let's not put the data centers where we have a stress on water. If you put, the data center, there is a geographical location to the data centers that will have to be considered, because if you go to the parts that are already water stressed, so the tension between different consumptions and the tension also with local communities will rise. And you will have to decide what is it that you want the water for which consumption. So let's have that in mind when we talk about the location of the data centers or the production that will need a lot of water. Second, obviously, like always, research and development for the new technologies will have to be, more investment on research and technology for technologies that will be more efficient in terms of water use will be important, because maybe that is not a factor that has been considered in the development of the technologies. And so we will have to put much more research and resources in trying to look for technologies that will reduce the impact on the environment. And obviously, thirdly, we need to go for renewable energy for the digitalization process, because we know that it's very energy intensive, so we have to go for a much more renewables. Now, let me say also that it has to be in addition to the investment in renewables that we already have to do for the consumption of the population at large. Because if not, if we will draw from the same pile for renewable energy and energy access in all the energy poor people of the world, or all the people of the world that has to make anyway the transfer from fossil fuels to energy, so somebody will be suffering. You know, we cannot have this get to a budget restriction of investment in energy. So we have to consider that. So obviously, many of the companies, I have to say, have a commit to renewable energy use. And that is a good thing. It's a good step forward. But what we say only is that it has to be additional investment for this purpose, so it won't enter into a trade-off with the other uses of energy, renewable energy, that are consistent with the commitments of the countries for Paris 15. Yes. So I don't know, Shamika and Torbjörn, if you want to add here.
Let me just add a couple of things. I think this is why, again, we have to go back to data. You see, we simply don't have data. We simply don't have a monitoring systems of what's going on. We don't have standards we don't have harmonized reporting standards. We don't have ability to collect a timely and comparable data. So these things need to be addressed, because unless we know what's going on, they are all anecdotal stories that we tell. Number two, I don't think we can, AI, these are very, very powerful technologies, and they have they can have immense impact on development. They can, help developing countries to improve their education system, the health systems, early warning systems, and there is no end to the use of this technology for development. But at the moment, they are not going to developing countries to uplift the populations. So there's that angle. Also, we need to address AI for what? AI is just for search engines, AI for marketing, AI to sell me a T-shirt, or AI for development. So there are many dimensions that we need to, start a discussion. This hasn't happened yet, but before it is too late, we need to embark on this conversation at international fora. The UN is the best place, because this is the most inclusive, a place where all developing countries have a say at the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to add a few more points, I think when we look at the impact on these big data centers, which is often influenced by AI, it's important to understand that they can have very local impacts. If you take the case of Ireland, for instance, the data centers in Ireland now, according to the government's regulator, account for about 18% of the country's total electricity consumption. And this is expected to rise to 28% in a few years from now. So for individual places, it has created stress not only on water, but also on electricity. Then in order to really, as was stressed here also by Shamika, in order to understand the full impact on the environment by artificial intelligence, we are highlighting here the direct environmental footprint But of course, how we use the AI will have great implications, which can be both positive and negative, because it may change the way we operate in various sectors that can sometimes lead to less environmental stress, but it can also add to more if we are changing the behavior of what we do. So and measuring the direct footprint is challenging. Measuring the indirect effects is even more challenging. So we simply need to put more emphasis on understanding these implications before we design all the rules and regulations for AI. The environmental link needs to be there also as we discuss all the other dimensions of the development implications of AI.
I think that in the press release we try to send strong recommendations, like in the form of tweets. Yes, because there are a lot of things that we can do to really take the opportunity that digitalization brings to development, but at the same time manage the impact that it has in the environment. And we say 5 things: adopting circular economy models, implementing resource optimization, strengthening regulations, investing in renewable energy, and promoting international cooperation. So this is a menu that is in our reach. It's not rocket science. Yes, we can do it. And I think that that is also the message of this report. We can do it. We can do it better, and at the same time harness digitalization for development.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, and for those online, your patience. There's one final question. I would just like to say that the answer for those covering this press conference previously has been provided by our colleague Torbjörn Fredriksson. He's the head of e-commerce and the digital economy branch of the Division of Technology, just for journalists covering this event. Now we go to a final question that is online from, I believe, Marco Guillot from Jeune Afrique. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I was wondering, how is the environmental impact of the extractive mining sector related to digitalization quantified, for instance, on air and water? And also as regard deforestation, aside from Brazil and global data, there are no specific figures illustrating the extent of these damages, for instance, like in DRC or Zimbabwe. So why is there no data communicated for these regions? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. In fact, we are highlighting in the report that the minerals and metals that are being used for developing and rolling out our digital technologies are very much similar to the ones that are needed for the low carbon transition, for the energy transition. And in fact, there is very little data available. Again, we're pointing to the lack of data here on the specific impact of digitalization. But we're emphasizing that what we're seeing in terms of the low carbon transition and digital transition is reinforcing each other, because we cannot go to the low carbon economy without relying heavily on digitalization. And at the same time, for digitalization, we need it to be as sustainable as possible. That means that we need to charge the digital activities increasingly with low carbon energy. So it's really reinforcing it. And we're highlighting in the report a number of issues that can arise as a result of these kind of mining activities that are taking place, mining and processing activities. But we don't have any specific numbers on precisely how much the digital mining related activities accounts for. But we are highlighting that these are additional areas that we need to pay attention to. And of course, a lot of it is related to ensuring that mining of these kind of minerals, like other minerals have to be done in as a sustainable way as possible, taking into account both the environmental dimensions that you highlighted and also the social implications and health aspects.
Let me add a bit. I think what you hear from this conversation is that the need for creating standards, need for creating data, need for collecting statistics, need for reporting. You see, in our report, we looked at the whole life cycle of the digital. So we started with the production and the use and the waste. So the production phase is the mining, and it is the processing of the minerals and metals, and it is the final production. And we find that that production phase exerts the greatest negative environmental impact. And why? It is because of mineral and metal production, the volume of greenhouse gas emissions generated and water-related impacts. So all that is happening at that very beginning phase. And just want to tell you that a number that I gave you before, digitalization relies heavily on the physical world and raw materials. Digital is not happening in the void. Now, for example, making a 2-kilogram computer can involve extracting 800 kilograms of raw material. So that's the extent of the raw materials is being used.
Let me make a comment on this. First of all, the recommendations that we put together, and I think that the last question is a very good one, really. The recommendations cannot be each of them seen in isolation, because if we have a circular economy, if there are standards, for example, for the life duration of the electronics that many say have intentionally done shorter than necessary. So the circular economy and the e-waste management are very important also for the mining side of this, because we can be overproducing, the minerals and having a higher impact on the environment, precisely because there is no circular economy in place and because the patterns of consumption are not changing. And so I think that we have to see this as a package, because if we don't act on the consumption side, we will continue to have a higher impact in the production side. In the production side, new technologies can be much better in terms of extractive for the environment. And those technologies have to be transferred to where the production is done. And I think that we have to differentiate, and I have to say this, between the big extracting mining activities and the small ones. We have to deal with both problems, yes? Multinational corporations and big corporations are a big part of the extracting, and they have more capacity for technology, for investment, for research and development, and for caring for the environment. In the small producers, yes, that also have an effect on the environment, there is other policies that have to be in place to help communities to change their source of income, and also to be more responsible with respect to the extraction activities that they carry on. But we have also to make a more granular analysis of the sector and to see which are the actors in the extracting part. And my last point with respect to Africa is that we really think that being Africa and Latin America, the south of Latin America, big reserves of the critical minerals that are necessary for both, like Torbjörn said, for the energy transition and for digitalization, the most important thing is that they will be able to reap the benefits of these reserves, because to go again through the path of commodity dependence, we know what We know it doesn't bring, the sustainable development that we want for these countries. So adding value, taking advantage for the diversification of the economies to produce better jobs and more value added for their populations is a must in this new revolution in terms of the energy transition and digitalization. So I think that we need to think about this in a more coherent and integral way in terms of the recommendations. Let me just finish, if you all allow me to say again what I said at the beginning. Digitalization is a welcome and necessary driver of global economic growth. But we need to do it in an inclusive and sustainable way. As rapid digitalization escalate environmental concerns, is now more urgent than ever to have the right policies in place so we can close the gaps, we can widen the opportunities, and we can manage properly the impact on the environment. Thank you.
Can I just say that if you look at the overview of our report, the executive summary, if you go to the page 20, 21, 22, there is a very easy table where we give policy recommendations for all the life cycle, the production, the use, and the end of life, and all phases. And we look at the policy options for national level, regional level, and international level. That would give you a lot of, like a material of the ground realities and the policies that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With this, we close the press conference. Just to underline that speakers are available for interviews, and for any further insights, we direct you to the web, unctad.org. The report will be online, all the data is available, and again, we underline the speakers are available for interviews and for engaging with media from now. Thank you very much.